So there are 4 constitutions. 2 constitutions are people who are born with a cold, damp spleen, and the other 2 are people who are born with a hot, dry spleen. This is the first fundamental difference.
I'm Michael Max, and this is Geological, the podcast that curates East Asian medicine and methods through the power of conversation. There's a potency to questions that are not easily answered, the ones that require living into, the ones that serve as guideposts, that are reliable traveling companions in a strange land. It takes trust to stay present when feeling uncomfortable. There's a kind of belonging that goes with answers. It's a nice place to rest, a way station, a moment in time you can take your shoes off and settle with comfort into a feeling of security and relief. Relief from the attentiveness that uncertainty calls forth. Potent questions will more likely than not disturb you a bit. Not in the agitated way that slow traffic does, but more in the way that certain social norms feel like a pebble in your shoe. Potent questions might make you annoying to your family and friends. They are the kinds of questions that have you moving not across town, but across the country. The ones that create or ruin your reputation. The ones that might bring you home to yourself, but then again, could leave you adrift at sea. Going on 30 years now, I have had the question, how does acupuncture work? It seemed innocent enough at the time. An odd medical technology from pre-modern times, how complicated could that be? All these years later, I still have the question. Every day that I go to work, I investigate it again. It's been a good traveling companion. At times, the only familiar friend when walking down a street whose name I can't pronounce, or finding myself in a restaurant with food full of foreign spice. Potent questions shape your destiny. They are a ping from the future that might exist. They time travel with you, like poems that speak with the words of your ancestors and children. There's a sacred madness to them. Potent questions are like the answer given by an oracle. They open slumbering potentials. They invigorate the mind and also enliven the spirit. The world has answers for sale, and for sure, the certainty that they promise, it's enticing. But answers rarely carry the limit-shattering potency of questions. Most patients, they have some kind of potent question because whatever troubles have them walking through your door, it's part of an inquiry. Regardless of whether it's knee pain, relationship struggles, or the thoughts they only allow themselves to consider in depth at 4 a.m. There's likely a potent question. And while often enough our patients are looking for an answer, what they might need even more is the potency of an inquiry that enlivens their life. East Asian medicine recognizes the central role that food can play in our health and well-being. Often enough, when considering constitution, we lean on the archetypical resonances of the 5 phases, but beyond the elements, we can view the body through the Korean satsang system of Shaoyin, Shaoyang, Taiyin, and Taiyang correspondences. In this conversation with Jaguang Sunim, we explore the Korean satsang constitutions along with 5-phase configurations as revealed in a person's Bazi chart. We'll also touch in on the satsang relationship between the spleen and the kidney, and also the lung and the liver. There's some interesting things to see here. If you're into the influence of food on our health, you're going to love this conversation. We'll be right back. Don't touch that dial. These conversations come to you through the generous support of our sponsors and members. Blue Poppy, your new one-stop shop, has speedy shipping options on everything that you need for your clinic. It's Women's Health Month at Mayway Herbs. Check out their new website for learning resources on helping women with herbal medicine. Are you a creature of habit? How about making a change that helps your patients and the planet with AccuFast needles. And later in the show, raising your fees doesn't have to be a difficult process. Jane has helpful suggestions on making it easy and effective. And finally, have you considered that having a thriving, profitable practice is one of the most healing things that you can do? Julie Bear-Don't-Walk has, and she can help you do something about it too. Do be sure to visit the sponsors page on the Qiological website to take advantage of all the special offers our terrific sponsors have for listeners of the podcast. Picture this. Your clinic is buzzing with patients, and then you realize that you're down to your last box of needles. No need for panic, because Blue Poppy, your one-stop shop for all your acupuncture needs, they ship orders received before 3 p.m. on the same day. With a quick visit to Blue Poppy's website, you can order premium needles, herbal formulas, and that special Dr. Bob's oil that your patients love. Blue Poppy understands practitioners can't keep patients waiting. That's why they strive to get you what you need when you need it. From high-quality Chinese herbs and formulations to acupuncture supplies and clinical essentials, Blue Poppy has served practitioners for nearly 40 years with products that meet the highest of standards. Discover everything Blue Poppy has to offer by visiting www.bluepoppy.com, and don't forget to subscribe to their mailing list for exclusive offers and more.
Hi folks, I'm Yvonne Lyle, president of Mayway Herbs. May is Women's Health Month, and as a women-owned and women-run business, we especially love how Chinese medicine can support wellness through every stage of a woman's life. So in this month's newsletter and podcast, we're covering topics like PMS, pregnancy, menopause, and osteoporosis. We'll share expert insights and effective treatment strategies you can put to good use in your clinic. Our Plumflower brand line includes herbal tea pills, tablets, extract granules, and organic herbs, all of which you can find on Mayway.com, and where you can also find articles, videos, and other resources to support your practice. Since 1969, Mayway has been a trusted source for high-quality herbal products. In these challenging times, please know that we remain committed to keeping our products accessible and affordable so you can take care of yourself and your patients. As always, thank you for supporting Real Chinese Medicine.
Daily habits and routines feel comforting, familiar, easy, automatic. That's the power of repetition. You've worked out the kinks and can do it with your eyes closed. But what if you shook things up? What if you ditched the old routine and tried something new? Hi, I'm John Sten. I've practiced acupuncture for over 30 years, and together with my wife Kelly, we created the world's first eco-friendly acupuncture needle. The AccuFast earth-friendly needle system cuts your packaging waste by 60 to 90%, depending upon your needle type, speeds up your needling, gives you more control, and best of all, while you're healing patients, we plant a tree for every 2 boxes your clinic uses. Thousands of acupuncturists have already made the switch. In just the last year, they've helped plant over 16,000 trees. Since we started, that number has grown to over 50,000. So break the routine. Be the change. Visit AccuFastNeedles.com. Your patients and the planet will thank you.
Jaguang Sunim, welcome to Qiological.
Thank you, Michael. I'm very happy and honored to be here.
What makes you so happy to be here?
I just enjoy talking about what I do, and I've heard a lot about you, and I'm really just delighted to have an opportunity to have a chat with you.
I'm thrilled to have you here. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about some Korean medicine, food therapy, a thing that some of our listeners might be familiar with, but most probably are not, which is the satsang. It's a constitutional way of making sense of a human being and their propensities toward wellness or their propensities toward illness. And it's something I've looked at a little bit over the years. And I had someone on some years ago and we talked about it. I always like getting some different perspectives, to really dial something in. So tell us a little bit about yourself, what brought you to this kind of a practice, and a little bit about the satsang.
Well, I came to satsang constitutional medicine rather surprisingly and indirectly because I originally found myself in South Korea, where I went to study Zen Buddhism. I was living and practicing in a monastery. I had ordained as a Buddhist nun and found that as I lived there over the years, my health was really deteriorating. The food there is very spicy, and I had always known that I didn't do well with spicy food, even though I knew nothing about constitutional medicine. And during my time there, I met a Korean monk named Jaguang Sunim, and as he got to know me and realized how unwell I was, he started talking to me about my body constitution and diet and started telling me some of the foods that I needed to stay away from in order to regain my health. And so that's how I first was introduced to it. He and I eventually ended up coming to North America, having a Zen center in Seattle, Washington, opening another Zen center in Berkeley, California. He was the teacher, I was his translator. And he was very keen on this Satsang constitutional medicine because it had also essentially saved his life when he was a young monk, because he also didn't do well with spicy food and had a lot of struggles when he was a young monk living in the monasteries. And he eventually was able to resolve his health issues when he came upon a practitioner of Satsang constitutional medicine. And they gave him an herbal formula which just completely turned his health around. So he was so impressed with that he decided he wanted to study this system so that he could independently learn how to take care of his own health. And it made such a difference for him that he realized it not only brought him back to good health, but it created a kind of internal balance that actually affected his spiritual practice as well. And he realized that it created a wonderful foundation of physical health and emotional calm that really benefited his spiritual practice and allowed him to go more deeply into his practice. So when we opened Zen centers in the US, then he started teaching this to people who would come for meditation as well, saying, it's important to cultivate the body as well as cultivate the mind, because the body is the vehicle through which we practice, through which we explore the mind through our meditation practice. And if we're struggling with physical aches and pains, if we're struggling with chronic anxiety or depression, many things like this that people hope to resolve through their spiritual practice, they can actually resolve through a system like Satsang constitutional medicine.
That really makes sense. As we're having this conversation and I hear you say it, I think to myself, oh my goodness, that's right. It's funny. Sometimes you don't think about something or it's rattling around in the back of your head, and then you hear someone say something and you're like, oh, wait a minute. That's right. That piece about when the body is more in balance, whatever spiritual or meditative practice you're doing, it would have a tailwind instead of a headwind. And it seems, at least here in the States, maybe this is just my own delusional thinking, but it seems here in the States, or in the West maybe, that we have this idea, if we get our spiritual thing together, if we get our mental thing together, well, the body's just going to come along. And we prioritize and put the mind above the body, even at the same time that we say there's a mind-body connection. And what I hear you saying here is, well, the mind and body are entangled. The mind might be a bit of a mess. Well, get the body right, the mind will naturally follow.
Yes. And the body can put up a lot of obstacles in front of us when we're trying to sit quietly and go deeply into ourselves. Even as we begin our meditation practice in that way, the meditation practice itself starts to make us more aware of what all is going on internally. Our awareness heightens, and anything that we become more aware of in terms of our physical problems, little aches and pains, emotional states that we realize are there nearly all the time. Sadness, depression, anxiety, anger, impatience. These all seem to come to the forefront more when we sit quietly, and they feel like more of an obstacle to us. So we think that mind over matter is the principle, but in fact, there are simpler ways to remove those obstacles. And when we are no longer distracted by those kinds of things, then we can actually go much more deeply into our true being, who we really are, outside of those things. And when mind, which is our normal intellectual, emotional mind, is trying to control or overcome intellectual, emotional mind, it becomes an endless battle. And for myself, I know when I started this practice of satsang constitutional medicine in terms of just my own diet and changing the foods that I ate, and realized how much my body mind being calmed down, then it allowed me to go more deeply into that place, which is more fundamental to body mind.
You used the phrase, the body is the vehicle through which we have our practice. And when I think of vehicle, I think of an automobile. Okay. And I can remember having some really crappy cars at certain points in my life. They rattle when you get above the speed of 50 miles an hour, and they were loose, and it did not make travel pleasant. Not like the car I have now. I've got a nice car right now. It turns on as soon as I push a button, and the seats are heated, and it's quiet. It's nice to go down the road and it's quiet. It's like when the vehicle is running well and it's solid and stable, well, travel's a real joy. But if the vehicle's a rattly old thing, it's not so great.
That's right. And you're always worried something bad's going to happen and you can't enjoy the scenery.
Exactly. So, all right, well, let's dive into taking care of the vehicle here. Satsang. Tell us a little bit about it.
So satsang originated in Korea in the 1800s. It was developed by an Oriental doctor by the name of E.J. Ma, who lived in the 1800s. He was born in the 1830s, died around 1900. He was a practitioner of traditional Korean medicine, which I haven't studied myself, but I understand it's very close to Chinese medicine. The Koreans learned this from the Chinese and then sort of developed their own style to a certain degree. And during his time practicing medicine, a pandemic, some kind of pandemic came through the country, through the villages where he lived. And he had...
As they do from time to time. It really messes things up, right?
We can very much identify with that.
Yes, we can.
And he had two patients come to him. One was a woman, a grown woman, I believe in her 30s or 40s. And the other was a young girl, I think around 10 or 12 years old. They both had these same symptoms of this illness. And he had an herbal formula that he experienced was fairly good at alleviating the symptoms of this virus. And so he gave the same herbal formula to both patients. The woman responded well to the herbs and recovered. And the young girl did not respond at all well to those herbal formulas. And she continued to get sicker and sicker, and the little girl died. And this impacted him greatly because he thought, now I have two people coming to me. They have the same illness. They have the same symptoms. I gave them the same medicine, and yet they responded in completely opposite ways. So why is this? He realized there was some factor that he wasn't considering. And this is what first motivated him to explore, how are people different? Obviously, these two people were very different, and what they needed for treatment was different. And that was the beginning of his exploration, where he looked into different constitutions, and he eventually developed a system of 4 constitutions and figured out ways in which they were different and what kinds of treatments they needed. The primary difference is that one constitution, so there are 4 constitutions. 2 constitutions are people who are born with a cold, damp spleen, and the other 2 are people who are born with a hot, dry spleen. This is the first fundamental difference. And then he also, in his studies and explorations of seeing how people differ, when he had the opportunity, he would dissect a corpse and look at their internal organs. And he discovered that some people would have, say, a much larger liver than other people. Some would have a larger lungs, larger kidneys, or whatever. Other people have particularly small certain internal organs. And then he realized that not only was the cold spleen or hot spleen a difference, but also some people were born with a liver that had a strong energy, or a liver that had rather deficient energy. And so he began to delineate the constitutions in that way as well. And that, along with his experiments with giving them herbs, changing their diet, seeing how foods have different energies according to the 5 elements. So this is all based on 5-element philosophy of ancient Taoist medicine. And then he began to develop programs for each constitution, both in diet and in Chinese herbal formulas.
That's interesting. A couple of things really catch my attention. First, very unusual that someone in Asian culture would do dissection.
I suppose.
Yeah, that's a little bit unusual. It's usually more associated with people in the West. So interesting that in his quest to try to understand why the girl died and why the woman lived, he went this far, and curious too to find out, the size of the different organs. That can make a great study for someone who's in school now, in terms of like looking at, pathology and seeing if there's modern correlations to this kind of thing in certain diseases. Right, that would lend itself very, very well to someone's dissertation or, doctoral program. But the thing that strikes me as a practitioner of Chinese medicine, we so focus on that fundamental aspect of earth, right? You look at the 5 phases, you could put earth in between fire and metal, or you could put earth dead center in the middle of all the elements. I tend to think of it as dead center because, it's just the way I think about it. It's just the way that I've gone with my particular way of doing medicine. And here he is. He's looking at constitution. Have you got yourself a damp, cold spleen or a hot, dry one? That seems like a not bad place to start with. Hey, what kind of person are you? Are you a happy purring kitty? Or are you a nervous skittery kitty? So people listening to this, probably Chinese medicine practitioners, we have ideas of what a cold, damp spleen looks like. I'm not sure we have an idea of what a hot, dry spleen looks like. Can you tell me a little bit about what you would look for to make this first basic determination?
Well, Jaguang Sunim discovered that the most accurate and efficient way to determine that is by looking at a person's 5-element natal chart.
So not necessarily looking at their body just as they stand in front of you.
Exactly. E.J. Ma, when he was developing the system, he tried to find physical external characteristics that could show him the person's constitution, the fundamental constitution of, do they have a cold, damp spleen or a hot, dry spleen? And he made many descriptions of their physical characteristics, their emotional characteristics, personality characteristics. He tried to use blood type, or I'm not sure if they even were typing blood in those days, but in more modern times, they tried to use blood type. And when Jaguang Sunim studied this system, what bothered him the most was even those descriptions do not still give you a really accurate map of how to determine someone's constitution in that way. So the 5-element charts he found give an accurate description. We can see their constitution accurately. Is their spleen hot and dry, or is it cold and damp? It shows very clearly once you learn how to interpret the 5-element chart.
So certain characteristics that we'd be used to thinking about, I think most Chinese medicine practitioners very comfortable understanding what a cold, damp spleen is. A person's probably pudgy, they've got loose stools, a lot of borborygmus, they don't digest well, they probably maintain water in their system, things like that. Fat, puffy tongue. Maybe somebody with more dryness, they'd be skinny, and a little hyperactive, something like that. Do some of those basics carry water, or is it still a matter of...
They do sometimes. There are some people who fit those descriptions, but I've also seen people with a hot, dry spleen look exactly as you described as well. Someone with a hot, dry spleen, if they eat a lot of warming food, the warming food causes weight gain. You can see people tremendously overweight, but they have a hot, dry spleen because that's what warming foods do for them. And warming foods are very, very popular in our society. Everyone eats them. If their kidney, someone with a hot, dry spleen generally will have deficient kidney, or kidney functioning is very poor, in which case they could start to retain water from poor kidney functioning, deficient kidney energy.
Okay, so they could look a certain way. They could look like a cold, damp spleen person because they're actually a dry, hot spleen. They've been eating foods that make that worse, that causes weight gain. They might have a predilection towards some kidney deficiency, so they're not metabolizing water. So they look like the cold, dry. They will present that way when they're in their unhealthy mode. I suspect a healthy mode, though, they're probably thinner.
Yes, healthy mode for someone with a hot, dry spleen. Healthy is to be slim because their energy likes to circulate quickly. Having hot, dry core of their body, their energy likes to be active. It likes to circulate well. And when they start gaining weight, then it can't circulate well, and that can lead to further health problems. I guess the one thing I could say that is generally different, and again, there are exceptions to this. There is no hard and fast rule, but generally speaking, people with a hot, dry spleen, because the core of their body is hot and dry, that heat tends to rise up and sit in the upper half of their body. People like that have a sense that their energy is they almost don't know how to express it. But if you ask them, where does your energy tend to sit? Where do you feel sort of the heaviness of your body? And they'll point to their chest and shoulders. For them, it's almost the lower body is so deficient in energy that it's almost like it doesn't exist. Like their whole focus of who they are is in the chest and shoulders and upper back. Whereas someone with a cold spleen, the core of their body is cold and damp. Cold sinks downward. So their energy tends to sit in the lower half of their body. And they can feel that as well. They feel more of a sluggishness in their hips, their buttocks, their legs, their feet. They can feel a heaviness in that part of their body. I have seen exceptions to that. I have seen someone with a cold spleen who has deficient kidney energy and strong fire, and perhaps even their personality is fire. And so they're very active, impatient. talk fast, rush through their day, and they don't look like someone with a cold spleen. But only the 5-element chart shows us, this is a person with a cold spleen. They happen to have deficient kidney as well.
We're going to get into the 5 elements here in a moment. I want to make sure that I've got my head around this spleen hot and dry. You say that's often paired with a deficient kidney?
Yes. Generally speaking, when stomach, which is spleen, stomach, which is the earth element, if it's hot and dry, earth absorbs water. Or they say earth defeats water. And so the hotter the stomach spleen is, the more this will deplete the water element, which is the kidney energy. And if they're eating a lot of warming foods on top of that, constantly further heating the stomach spleen, the kidney just gets more and more deficient until they change their diet.
Because they're sucking that kidney water into the earth, burning it up.
Yeah, it's like I describe people's constitution as their body landscape, the 5 elements being taken from nature. Say when you have a hot, dry spleen, it's like internally you have a desert landscape. And just think of how much water there is. Even if it rains, that water will be depleted very quickly as soon as the sun comes up. In the desert, the heat, that dry earth will absorb the water very quickly.
This episode is brought to you by Jane, the clinic management software that honestly just makes running a practice easier. Let's dive into something that's never easy, but sometimes necessary: raising your fees. It can feel awkward, right? But here's a tip that can really help. Consider offering flexibility to your patients as you introduce the change. When patients face new fees, it's natural for them to feel uncertain or concerned. That's where flexibility can really make a difference. Offering options like a phased increase, suggesting a payment plan, or even taking a moment to talk things through can help to ease the transition. These thoughtful gestures show your patients that you're listening and care about them, which strengthens the trust you've worked so hard to build. If you're looking for more ideas on how to navigate these kinds of changes, head to frontdesk.jane.app and check out the article, How to Tell Clients You're Raising Your Fees. One last thing, if you're ready to give Jane a try, you can use the code CHEOLOGICAL for a 1-month grace period on your new Jane account. Right. And likewise, if the spleen is cold and damp, you're going to have more fluid, more excess in the kidney as well. So in a way, this is about water metabolism.
That's certainly one aspect of it. Yeah, the relationship between spleen and kidney is one of the fundamentals of the constitutional system.
I know that I've seen charts where we think of, in Chinese medicine, we think of the Liu Jing, like the 6 different levels. There's Taiyang, Yangming, Shaoyang, that whole thing. But with the satsang, there's just 4. There's like lesser yang, lesser yin, greater yang, greater yin.
Yes. Although in the greater yin, there are 2. There's greater yin with a hot spleen, and there's greater yin with a cold spleen. So there's actually 5. E.J. Ma listed it as 4 main constitutions because he took it from the I Ching. He started his whole philosophy from the I Ching of starting with 1. The 1, he started with the principle of 1, and 1 divides into 2, yin and yang. And then each yin and yang divides again, so then you have 4. That's where he established the 4 constitutions originally.
That makes sense. I can see how that would work. Tell us a little bit about the lung and the liver.
So this is another aspect. This is particularly related to the greater yin constitution, or the greater yang constitution. So because lung energy, which is metal energy, governs over liver, which is wood energy. How those two are related to each other will change your constitution. So a greater yin constitution is one where lung energy is deficient and liver energy is excessive. And that creates imbalance for both internal organs because by nature, lung energy needs to govern over liver. And if lung energy is too weak,
the kids are running wild.
Yep, the parent is too weak and sickly. The child is a big, strong teenager and does whatever it wants. And that creates a kind of imbalance that for him created a different constitution. And in terms of using herbal formulas, even if they have a cold spleen, they still need a different set of herbal formulas than someone of a lesser yin constitution as cold spleen, but liver and lung energy are more equal. And so there is that. And then the greater yang constitution is just the opposite. Lung energy is excessive, liver energy is deficient. So that lung energy, instead of just balancing liver, it actually ends up attacking and weakening the liver because the controlling influence is too excessive.
You mainly work with food. You've mentioned herbal formulas. Do you work with herbal formulas very much or mainly food?
I mainly use food. I find that a lot of people, the majority of my clients, do very well if they follow the nutritional program that I create for their body landscape. If they follow it as instructed and are able to avoid the foods that they need to avoid, most people respond very, very well. Their symptoms respond very well. And in most cases, herbs are not needed. But there will be the occasional person where their symptoms are very chronic or their symptoms are coming from a lot of energy blockage, meridians are blocked, and food alone doesn't have the potency to establish the kind of balance that's necessary for the symptoms to heal. And in that case, we will use Chinese herbs. Jaguang Sunim is the herbalist. I consult with him. I give him their 5-element chart. I give him their symptoms, and he tells me the formula that will be suitable for them. So we work together that way. I have the herbs here. I put them together in the formula he gives me. So we work that way.
Well, we often talk about use food as medicine. I think a lot of people listening to this conversation probably cotton to that, probably think that's a really good idea if you can do it.
Yes. Food is very potent. The energetic characteristics of foods has a tremendous impact on our body, much more than we might realize.
Well, it's something we're doing several times a day. It's an influence that we're constantly imbibing. So on one hand, the influence is sort of slow and moderate, but on the other hand, done over time, it can be very profound. It's almost like saving money. You know, if you just put like $100 aside every week, starting at the age of 18, you know, you could retire by the time you're 50 because of compound interest, right? That idea that because you do get that compounding of effect over time, it becomes very, very potent. But it takes time to have that potency.
Exactly. And depending on the person, it can take a few years, even a few decades before their health starts to deteriorate. And by that time, people simply chalk it up to, oh, it's just old age. I'm getting old. I expect to have these symptoms as I get older.
You're not buying it. It doesn't have to be.
It doesn't have to be like that. If we understand what foods really support our own internal energy makeup, then and just give our body those foods, the body thrives and functions very well. Now, people who are born with plenty of energy, they have good stamina, their body can withstand or throw off the effects of the foods that don't work for them for quite a long time, or they get little minor symptoms that they ignore But then there are people who were not born with such tremendous energy or strong stamina, and that makes their body a lot more sensitive to whatever they give their body that doesn't work for their constitution. So I have many clients in their teens and 20s, who are already experiencing sometimes a long list of health symptoms because either their constitution is a very sensitive one or just they don't have the strong energy that some people do. And it affects them emotionally as well. And then the combination of the emotional struggles as well as the physical struggles make their body really rebel to anything that doesn't really fit their constitution.
Well, I'm one of those more sensitive people, so I get it. I didn't choose it. It's just the way I was. I've got a question. This might be a little provocative, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So you talk about people that are more sensitive. I don't like using the term weak, but they might not, they're not as strong. Okay? And that can affect you physically. It can affect you psychoemotively. Something that I've noticed with younger people, and I'm thinking about like my daughter who's 19 and like her cohort that she's known in high school and now going to college with. A lot of these kids, a lot of them have some kind of mental health diagnosis. Many of them are on some kind of psychoactive medication. They're proud to have a mental health diagnosis. It's almost a badge of honor. Now, I look at that and go, you're 18 or 19 years old, and you're happy that you've got a depression diagnosis? Is there something about the food? Is there something about our modern lifestyle? It's worrisome to me that young people increasingly have mental health issues, and they seem to be okay with it.
That's interesting. I hadn't really heard that. Also, ADD is very commonly diagnosed now. And I have seen many people find their emotional state really changes when they follow their constitutional diet. It can be a result of a simple internal imbalance that is not being corrected.
And sure, and a lot of them have food sensitivities as well.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
So we're back to spleens that are not working correctly.
Yes. So spleen governs the brain, right? The way our head feels, the way our brain functions is very much governed by spleen. And if it's off balance, it can either cause, cold, damp spleen can cause foggy headedness, poor functioning. Also, if there's poor flow between stomach and lungs, if there's blockage there, that can cause a sense of the synapses aren't working properly, that you can't think quickly, you get bogged down mentally. All of that can happen if you open up that circulation.
Tell me more about a poor flow between spleen and lungs.
If lung energy is deficient or blocked itself in some way, then energy flow from stomach into lungs will not occur in an efficient way. When lung energy is deficient, if you are born with deficient lung energy, then it's almost like the energetic entranceway as energy tries to flow from stomach to lungs. The entranceway is small, so it has difficulty getting through. It'll back up and stay in the stomach too long, can create problems for the stomach. The lungs don't get the nutrients, the energetic nutrition that it needs from the stomach. And that can eventually even affect the way our brain feels, the way our thinking works, in terms of the efficiency of our thinking.
Now, this is interesting to me. You just said the energy of the stomach going into the lung. Often, and again, I'm thinking, I don't know Korean medicine. I know a little Sa'am acupuncture. But often, it seems, in our trade, we're thinking more the yin organs than the yang organs. So often people would say, spleen energy going into the lung. But I heard you say stomach. And that's interesting to me because in the Sa'am acupuncture system, the lung is connected not to the large intestine. I mean, it is connected to the large intestine, but in the Sa'am system, lung and stomach are counterbalanced organs, yin and yang.
Yes. So in the Sasang system, stomach, spleen are considered as one. They are both the earth element. And if you look at the cycle through 5 elements, earth flows into metal. So the energy of my teacher always referred to it as stomach spleen. Stomach spleen energy flows into lungs. That's part of the cycle. And when it can't flow into lungs efficiently, then it can create problems for either organ.
Of course. So I was just trying to ascertain here, when you said stomach, was that a shorthand for earth or spleen stomach, or was there something very specific about stomach?
That was shorthand for earth element. Yes.
It just connects with that Sa'am thinking that I have. Anytime I hear someone connect the lungs and the stomach, I'm like, ooh, tell me more. But yeah, those 5 elements. Okay, great. Maybe this would be a good moment to turn to the 5 phases and the Bazi and the birth chart and bring that in. I happen to have an app on my phone because, it's 2023 as we're speaking, and almost everything's on a phone. It's amazing. Like the Library of Alexandria is in my pocket. I have an acupuncturist made this and sent me a copy. It'll tell you your birth chart. It'll tell you what you got and what you don't got. So how about we talk about me for a moment as a way of understanding this? So I've got my my chart here. I'm happy to tell you I'm balanced in wood. I'm balanced in fire. Okay?
What we use, the 5 element charts that we use, is the one that give you the Chinese characters. Because for Earth, there are 4 different Chinese characters, all representing, that's on the bottom, 6. There are 6 different Chinese characters representing Earth. So if you can use an app that gives you the actual Chinese characters, then that tells me more, because I need to know what type of Earth you have. Do you have winter Earth? Do you have spring Earth? Do you have summer Earth? Autumn Earth?
I don't know. I just know I've got 43% Earth, according to this.
Okay.
But yeah, which Earth is it? That's a great question.
There are many online websites that will give you the Chinese characters. So the actual, the 8, there are 8 characters to a natal chart. So 2 each for year, month, day, and time. And where they're located in the chart makes a difference, as well as what qualities of each of those elements you have.
Okay, so this is like the 4 pillars.
Yes.
Okay, I'm scrolling down to the bottom here and putting on my reading glasses because I can see I can see what I've got by the hour, day, month, and year.
Okay.
Would that be helpful?
Yes. Do they give you the Chinese characters?
It does not. It just tells me that my hour, I've got a lot of Yang Fire Dragon. But no, it doesn't give me the characters. Okay, well, maybe this won't be as useful as I thought it would. But tell us a little bit then about how you do use this. Again, I'm in very rough terms. I've got a lot of earth. I don't know what kind. Balanced wood and fire. And now this connects with what we were talking about earlier. I have deficient water and I have deficient metal.
Interesting. So then there would be some difficulty of flow from earth into metal, since you have excessive earth energy and deficient metal. Then there would be some difficulty there for that flow to happen.
Because I got all this earth and I've got a small little portal for it to go into metal. I could use a big metal gate, but I got a small little tunnel.
Yes. Uh-huh. I always compare it to building a dam across a river, and you just leave a little opening for the water to trickle through. The water's going to back up behind the dam and form a lake. So that's what happens to earth element when it can't flow into metal. It will back up and stay in the stomach spleen too long.
Now, with what little you know about me from all that, is there a way to get a sense of what constitution I might be? And
No.
No. We need to really have a full Bazi chart.
Yeah. It would only be a guess because I have seen both yin and yang constitutions with a lot of earth energy. And just because they have a lot of earth energy doesn't necessarily mean they are a yang constitution. It can, but it depends on what type of earth it is, where it shows up in the 5-element chart, where the fire is. All of that can determine.
Having a thriving, profitable practice is one of the most healing things you can do as a healthcare practitioner. Because a robust business is the ultimate expression of vital qi, and that's the heart of our medicine. I'm Julie Bairdontlock, and I help practitioners grow nourishing, profitable, authentic businesses that embody the generative cycle of Chinese medicine. This isn't about all yang all the time. It's about expanding your own internal capacity, growing collaborative relationships with your patients for ethical patient retention, and marketing as an extension of this medicine, not a necessary evil. You already know that everything is connected in your patients' lives and bodies. The same is true for your business. When we align your systems, your schedule, your pricing, and your offerings with you, we create flow, which means more spaciousness, more impact, and more joy. When you are in the flow, fully resourced in terms of qi, time, and money, your business becomes a source of healing, not just for your patients, but for you. Let's grow something rooted, radiant, and real. Visit lifeflowconsulting.com to learn more.
When I think about constitutional types, I think this is fuzzy, not maybe fuzzy thinking, but lazy thinking on my part. One of the things about constitution, first of all, I think it's very powerful and helpful. But secondly, I often think it's kind of a shorthand. Like, if I can figure out the constitution, I'm already halfway home to knowing what to do, right? So there's that. But I keep thinking, oh, it should be, somewhat easy to figure out constitution. But what I'm hearing from you is it's not just a matter of look and see. I know systems where sometimes it's look and see, or you kind of get a sense, you listen to how they talk, or the color of the face, and all these things. You're saying that birth chart is absolutely key to understanding what's going on. Looking at the body maybe will help you, but if it's an unhealthy body type, if the body's already unhealthy, it's not going to be a reliable indicator.
That's right. That's right. And there are so many variations within each constitution. With there only being the 4 or 5 constitutions, take any one constitution, there's so many different varieties and variations that are possible. The only common denominator is the hot spleen or the cold spleen. Everything else in terms of the other internal organs can be a variable. And that will show up differently in terms of how that person acts, how they talk, what they look like. It can vary a lot. And a lot of our physical characteristics are something we inherited from our parents. It has nothing to do with our constitution. So, if you have 2 parents who are both tall and thin, then you're probably going to be tall and thin also, regardless of your constitution.
Okay, so help me out here. This is interesting. I thought our constitution was that build of our body. At least that's the big piece of constitution. What you look like, what you sound like, what you act like.
Yeah, that's originally how E.J. Ma described it. That was his best effort. But he did say towards the end of his life in one of his books, he said that he felt that he was still developing the system, that it still needed improvement, and he hoped that future practitioners would continue to improve on it. And I was actually just talking with Jaguang Sunim yesterday on the phone, and he was saying how he feels that he's gone even deeper into the principles and seen even more deeply all the things that you can see through the 5-element chart, and seeing not only their constitution, but personality, emotional things, even mental states that can affect their health. And I said, "Are you going to write a book about this?" He said, "Well, eventually." But he and I have been using the 5-element charts to see constitution for 30 years. And over that time, we have seen so many different people. I mean, literally, I've worked with thousands of people, and to see so many, all of the same constitution, say the lesser yang constitution, and they can be all shapes and sizes, all personality types. You just can't see that common denominator from outside characteristics.
Okay, that's a little bit of a mind-bending thing for me, having practiced for as long as I have, and relied on that, often with helpful results. That said, there certainly are plenty of cases where, look, someone ticks the box this, and this way. They should respond to what I'm doing, and they don't. Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So what I think I hear you saying is sometimes the outside will match the inside constitution, but don't be fooled. Sometimes it won't. How often would you say it matches the outside versus not? Is that a fair question?
I don't look at that much. I don't pay a lot of attention to that. But I know in the early days when I started really using this on my own, originally, for many years, I simply worked as Jaguang Sunim's translator, and we would do the consultations together with him speaking in Korean and me translating into English. And so I just kind of learned it by osmosis that way. And when I first started really fully practicing it on my own, I used to just I'd notice people on the street and see if I could see what their constitution was. And over the years, I realized you just can't depend on that because there are so many exceptions. And I had seen so many exceptions over the years. Oh, look at this person. This person's lesser yang. They don't have that, narrow hips and broad shoulder. They have very broad hips. And some people are prone to weight gain, others are not. And the longer I practice this system, the more I realize you really can't depend on that. It's risky to try and go by that.
That invites me into a little recalibration then on how I think about this. But again, it also helps me understand those cases where, I'm banging my head against it. I think I know what I'm looking at. What am I missing here? That's always the question that goes in my mind. I got fooled. What did I miss? And maybe that Bazi, really understanding that birth chart, would give me some clues.
The 5-element chart just reveals everything. You can see their constitution. You can see which internal organs have deficient energy, which have excessive energy. You can see where the energy flows and doesn't flow. It just removes all the mystery. And it's a system that is teachable. Learning to interpret the 5-element chart does take some training. It's not something that you can just look at and say, oh, that looks simple enough. It does take some training, but it is teachable. And once you learn that, then it gives you so much insight into what is going on with that person. It shows you fundamentally where the underlying imbalance is that's giving rise to their symptoms. And then once you know the cause of the symptom, then you know how to rectify it.
I suspect this could be very, very helpful for people that do acupuncture.
Yes, for people who do acupuncture, and actually anyone who who practices alternative medicine in any form. It really gives insight into what's going on with their patient.
Because we can use food, we can use herbs, we can use acupuncture, maybe some lifestyle changes as well.
Yes, even supplements. There are certain supplements, you have to start looking at supplements in terms of their energetic character. There are supplements that absolutely will not be effective for certain people because of their energetic character.
For example?
For example, calcium is metal energy. Someone who has osteoporosis, they've been told to take calcium, but their lung energy is tremendously excessive. That's why they have osteoporosis as they get older. Give them calcium that throws their whole body off balance.
Now, how does too much lung energy translate into osteoporosis? What's the...
Lung energy also governs over the bones, large intestine, but also bones. Bones, teeth, nails.
Kidney
to some extent, but in the sasang system, lung energy so the metal energy is the hardest and strongest of the 5 elements, and so it's seen as related to the hard aspects of the body, meaning the bones, the teeth, the nails.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. All right, that takes my usual correspondences of what's connected to what. It doesn't turn it on its head, but it opens a different lens to look at it through. Metal energy is hard, refined energy, aspects of the body. I could see how that would fit bones. What about the kidney then? Could you give me just a very quick primer on the different elements and what they resonate with? We just talked about the lung with the bones and the teeth and the nails, the hard things. Could we just do a very quick go around here just to help people open up another lens of perspective?
Yeah. Lungs also govern over the skin. So they can be associated with skin issues. Kidney energy governs over the joints. Bones to some extent. In sasang medicine, we consider kidneys and lungs both to be associated with bones. Kidney energy, particularly joints. And of course, in the whole lower body. Kidney energy, so the urinary system, lower back, reproductive organs, and in some ways, the lower abdomen. So in sasang medicine, we consider kidney energy to govern over the bowel movements. So whether you have normal bowel movements, constipation, diarrhea, or loose bowels can depend very much on the functioning of the kidney energy. Also, so the whole lower body, legs, feet, so it can rule over if you're having restless legs. Of course, water retention, we all know that. Restless legs, leg cramps, also related to kidney energy. Liver governs over cholesterol levels, blood pressure levels, functioning of the thyroid, the immune system, and then, of course, the nervous system. Heart, fire element, small intestine, I think that's common to everyone. Heart, small intestine. Heart mainly related to circulation, how much heat. It provides heat for the body. Someone with a cold spleen, the heart or fire element is their one source of heat. If they have a cold spleen and very deficient fire, then they're going to be very, very cold and have very sluggish metabolism.
So boosting up the fire for those people, very helpful.
Yes. But first you have to warm the spleen. Warm the spleen first for about a month and then boost the fire.
So it can receive the fire?
Yes, so it can receive the fire. If you try to boost the fire first before warming the spleen or at the same time, try to do both together, boosting the fire will generally result in symptoms of floating fire.
Because it can't be received by the spleen.
Yes.
You were talking about this earlier with too much earth not being able to go into metal. So you need to You need to make sure things are opened up and receptive before you tonify its mother, so to speak.
Exactly.
That makes sense. That's another one of those moments of, oh, that's right. So often I'll look at something that's deficient and think, oh yeah, I'm just going to go tonify its mother. That'll fix it. I'll go get its mother. I'll go get its mother to go ride herd on it, and then it'll be fine. But if it's not able to receive that influence, you could send all the love you want to someone who needs some love, but if they're not open to having a little love,
exactly, yes.
Yeah, you're just going to be annoying to them.
And also the other thing that can be misunderstood is when you see something that seems to have very low functioning and you think, oh, I need to boost that organ. Sometimes the low functioning is because that organ has such excessive energy. So sometimes poor functioning can be the result of excess rather than the result of deficiency. So that's where, again, the 5-element chart shows you, oh, this is why this isn't functioning well. I don't need to boost this. I need to reduce anything that boosts it.
I see. Because it's excessive, and so it is stagnated. It's not weak. It's stagnated.
It's overburdened. It's like putting too much air in a tire. It becomes the couch potato.
I love it. This for me is why I so love practicing this medicine, because it really does invite us into taking our ideology, I'm going to call it. I think it works like this. I've got my theories, which are helpful. They can orient you. But then the question becomes, how's it working in this person at this moment? Right? Something's not functioning well. Is it because it's weak? Or is it so overburdened and stagnated? It can't do anything. That's a very, very important distinction that I think I overlook too often and conflate stagnation with deficiency.
And if it's a condition that they were born with, in other words, that's the amount of energy that organ received at birth. It's something that doesn't change. It doesn't mean that next month it's going to be better. It will only change if we balance what nourishes it and what it nourishes, so that we improve energy flow through that organ.
Okay. Maybe you should write the book. You've got the good English.
I am going to. I've actually started on working on a book because I need to write a book that Westerners can relate to. What Jaguang Sunim writes is going to be one that is more Eastern in flavor. I mean, and he's going to get down to the real nitty-gritty of the philosophy behind it. He's a Zen monk. He's a spiritual practitioner as well. And so he's combining the depth of his spiritual understanding with going more deeply into these principles as well. As actually was E.J. Ma. E.J. Ma was actually a spiritual practitioner. He was a Taoist, and he believed in self-cultivation as a way to, as a contributing factor in staying healthy. So, but yes, I am starting to work on the outline of a book. I think it's very important. I want to see other people practicing this system because it is so helpful for people. And it so removes the mystery of so many symptoms that people experience. It tells you the why.
It tells you the why. It's funny. Before we got on to have this conversation, I'm thinking to myself, 4 constitutions. This should be easy.
Yes. That's what I thought too in the beginning.
Yeah.
I studied basic 5 elements at, this is easy.
Yeah, this is easy. Watch this. Here, hold my cup of tea.
Human beings are complicated.
Yes, we are.
But this reduces it to a simplicity. When you see the basic foundation of what people received when they were born, then it removes a lot of the mystery and a lot of the complication.
He's threatening to write a book. You're in the midst of it. What if somebody wanted to learn more about this? Is there a way, or Are you teaching or?
I am going to be doing some trainings. Yes, I'm going to be doing some trainings next year.
Do you have dates for those?
I don't have dates at the moment. I am working on setting up a training as well. That's my one of my goals for next year.
It's on the to-do list for the Wood Dragon year.
Yes. Yes, good year.
Good year to do things like that.
Yes.
All right. Well, this is great. I came in thinking I understood a little, and now I realize there's a lot more that I don't understand. So I guess that's a kind of progress.
Yes. Well, it's like anything. The more you know, the more you realize you don't know. The more you explore and study, the more that is revealed. It's just a wonderful way of better understanding yourself and your clients, your patients, people around you. It even helps me understand my family, who are not the slightest bit interested in this. But, it helps me when I look up their 5 element charts, it helps me to completely understand who they are, why they behave the way they do. Which helps you to be more compassionate also.
But I guess when you recognize where people have their stagnation and where they have their deficiencies, yeah, it can lead to more compassion.
And it's something else that the 5 element charts show is personality aspects. Why is someone a perfectionist? Why are they so stubborn? Why are they this? Why do they have so much anxiety? This sort of thing. You see there's a reason why. You see there's a reason simply from the energetic pattern they were born with. And I think that's very helpful. It's helpful for people to know that about themselves. They can be more compassionate with themselves, about themselves.
That is usually helpful.
Yes. No more blaming.
Yeah, and starting with ourselves is a good place to start. Hard place to start.
It's a hard place to start, but it's eventually very fulfilling. If we can be willing to take a good hard look for the sake of having a pathway by which we can change, those changes can bring great satisfaction, joy.
Okay. Well, I will make sure that your contact information is on the show notes page, because I suspect some of the listeners to this would like to know more, and they'll probably be in touch with you.
Yes, and I also offer a free informational call. If someone goes to my website, mybodylandscape.com, they can schedule a free call with me if they have questions. They want to know more about how this works, how a consultation would work. They're free to set up a schedule, a time to talk with me. And there's also a free ebook on my website that they can download that gives some examples of 5 element charts and what we saw in those charts and how people responded to diets. There's a little book there they can download as well.
Terrific. Well, thank you so much for this time today. It has, again, I came in thinking this is simple. I'm going to get something I'm going to be able to use right now. And what I come away with is, oh, it's more involved, but that dance of how it's more involved, that to me is the essence of why East Asian medicine is as powerful and at times confounding as it is. So thank you so much for all that.
Thank you, Michael. I really enjoyed our conversation.
I always love when we touch back into the first principles in East Asian medicine, and also how those first principles come in different flavors, how they help us to dial in various perspectives, and how we can use these in service of helping the people who seek our assistance. Mostly, what I love about all this is we are working with a kind of source code. So really, the healing of our patients, it comes from them. Sure, we're involved, but we're not the source of change. We are not the reason for people's lives changing. They are. Just like a gardener assists the plants in her garden, the flourishing comes from the innate capacity of the plant. Our job is to attend to the beauty and capacity of that which is ours to care for. Well, here we are at the end of this episode. If you've listened up to this point, you're either a rabid fan of Qiological or the forward button on your podcast player stopped working. If you are indeed a fan of the podcast, you can help us to bring new episodes to our community of practitioners by supporting us with a membership or a one-time contribution. Details, of course, are on the website. That's it for today, friends. Join us again next Tuesday for another thoughtful episode of Qiological.